It's interesting to think about where the idea to start a company around this stuff comes from. And I think Angela's work in particular is probably the technology area where we get the most inbound inquiries from people saying, when can I get that hair replacement drug? Or when can I get the hair removal drug? And so I'm actually curious, as each of you were thinking about the path you took, how did you know you had something that was, of all the work you're doing, of all the, especially I know in your work, there's dozens of different areas that you and your students are pursuing. How do you know which one to start with? How did you know when you had an idea that was going to make for a great startup? And maybe I'll start with you, Michal, but if each of you
So in my case, I think I'm fortunate because there is much less subjectivity. I mean, it's in all these areas where my technology is applied, like sensing and data communications, computing, LiDAR for autonomous vehicles, even all kind of light emitters, for example. Just very, very efficient bulbs. There are always very clear numbers that you need to hit, and these are known. So there is no subjectivity. If you hit those numbers, you're good.
And when you say numbers, maybe explain.
So when I mean numbers, I mean energy efficiency, or if it's relevant, speed, or in the case of LiDAR, how far can I go? With what precision? So all these numbers, these are tables, and we know when we got something really good.
Interesting. And I'll just ask a follow-on question before we move on. One of the things, how many folks in the room have gone through some kind of a lean launch-based, like a lean launchpad-based accelerator or iCore or something like that? Or familiar with how those work? Customer discovery? So the whole concept of customer discovery is to go out and talk to your customer and figure out, do 100 customer interviews, figure out what people really want. Does the fact that your startups and your science tend to rely on such clear objective measures, is it still important to go talk to the customer, or is that secondary, do you think?
I think it's important because when we get out, we don't yet have the numbers. We have we have projections for these numbers, but we need to know how close do we need to hit them. Are we in a good place relative to what the customer needs or not? But we know very clear where do we need to go.
Okay, got it. Tilla, how about you? 22 years, and this is the first time you've decided to go jump in. Why now?
Well, I would have jumped in 10 years ago if somebody had believed me. But so here I am. How do I get to this? I agree with Michal. You have numbers, they work, it's correct. Whoa, it's much faster, much cheaper. That's basically what got me started. So I used to be a director of biochemical genetics, where basically you handle clinical samples for people who have diseases. You use mass spectrometry, you do regular routine stuff, but it takes forever, and it's very expensive eventually. And you know you can do this in 30 minutes with the other technique that you transfer over from the more basic science end of Columbia. And that's very tempting. You can almost not do it. Not do it. I mean, yeah. So, it's a progress that needs to get out there. Yeah.
Great.
So, in dermatology, the category of disease that has what we call the most unmet medical need, meaning scarcity of treatments, is actually hair loss. And so there was no question in our field how important new treatments for hair loss are. But to take a step back from that, the reason my lab works on hair loss is because I came to Columbia and 6 months later my hair fell out. I developed alopecia areata myself, which is an autoimmune form of hair loss, and looking around and seeing how little was known at the time was really what launched our lab down this path of hair loss research. But what was the surprise for me was the outpouring of, as Oren mentioned, emails and letters and phone calls from patients asking, in some cases demanding, these treatments be pushed forward. The surprise was the outcry of the need for hair removal, as well as for hair loss. I think for hair loss, it's a given that most people want more hair, but I was shocked at the outpouring from people who actually suffer greatly from having excessive hair. And so Skinetics really got started basically as a push from the community of patients who really suffered, and that was unknown to me. So ours came kind of two ways, from my own experience, but then also from listening to these the communications from people, from patients, your customers, or people who wanted it. Yeah.